The red sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the mining fields. Taman wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched another human collapse from exhaustion. The man would not get up again. None of them ever did after they fell like that. "Keep working," growled the Vextai overseer. The alien stood 3 meters tall with 4 muscular arms and a face like carved stone. Crystal spikes jutted from its skull, glowing with a cold blue light. Quota must be met. Taman wanted to help the fallen man, but he knew better. The last person who stopped working to help someone else had been vaporized on the spot. These aliens did not understand mercy. They saw humans as nothing more than tools that happened to breathe. Across the mining pit, Heejin caught his eye. She was bent over her scanner, pretending to work while actually monitoring alien communication frequencies. Her skills as a xenobiologist had kept her alive longer than most, but Taman could see the exhaustion in her movements. The Vextai had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They conquered every species they encountered with ease. Their ships were the size of cities. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their shields could stop the light of stars. Every race that met them either surrendered immediately or died fighting a hopeless battle. Humans had been discovered 50 years ago. Earth had tried to fight, of course. The war lasted 6 hours. After that, humans were classified as a slave species, barely intelligent enough for manual labor. The Vextai found them useful for mining operations because human hands were small enough to work in tight spaces. Taman remembered his old life as an engineer on Earth. He had designed bridges and buildings that could withstand earthquakes. Now he dug holes in alien dirt with primitive tools. The irony was not lost on him, but he had learned to keep such thoughts to himself. The overseer's crystal spikes flared brighter. That usually meant bad news was coming through their communication system. Taman kept his head down and continued digging, but he strained to hear what Heijin might pick up on her hidden scanner. "You humans are fortunate," the overseer announced suddenly. Its voice sounded like grinding metal. "The High Command has decided your usefulness has ended. In 6 months, all human colonies will be cleansed. You should be honored to serve the Empire one final time." Several humans stopped working, staring at the alien in shock. Taman felt his heart skip a beat. Cleansed meant only one thing. The Vextai were planning to kill every human in the galaxy. "I said keep working." The overseer raised one of its 4 arms. Energy crackled around its clawed hand. The quota must still be met. Everyone went back to digging, but Taman could feel the fear spreading through the group like poison. 6 months to live. 6 months before the Vextai decided humans were no longer worth keeping alive. That night, in the cramped sleeping quarters, Taman met with the others who knew about their small resistance group. There were only 12 of them, hiding in the shadows between shifts. Heijin was there, along with Do-hyun, who had been a physicist before the conquest, and Soo-young, a former teacher. "I confirmed it," Heijin whispered. The order came directly from the Vextai homeworld. They call it Operation Final Cleansing. Every human colony, every ship, every settlement. They plan to wipe us out completely. "Why now?" Do-hyun asked. "We have been good slaves. We cause no trouble." "Resources," Soo-young said quietly. "They found another species to replace us. Beings called the Threx. They can work in smaller spaces and need less food." Taman clenched his fists. His people were going to die because they had been replaced by better tools. The Vextai did not see them as living beings with families, dreams, and hopes. They were just equipment to be discarded when something better came along. "We have to warn the other colonies," he said. "Earth, Mars, the outer settlements. They need to know what is coming." "And then what?" Do-hyun asked. "Earth tried to fight them once. We lost in 6 hours. What can we do with mining tools and broken equipment?" "We can try," Taman said. "We can die fighting instead of waiting to be slaughtered like animals." Hyejin pulled out her scanner. "I have been studying their technology for years. Their computers, their weapons, their ships. They are advanced, but they think in straight lines. Everything follows patterns. They expect other species to think the same way they do." "What do you mean?" Soo-young asked. "They conquered 847 species across 12 sectors of the galaxy," Hyejin explained. "Every single one of those species fought them the same way. Big fleets, energy weapons, shield battles in space. The Vextai perfected that kind of warfare long ago. So we cannot beat them at their own game," Taman said. "We need to play a different game entirely." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "Humans always survive by being creative. When the Ice Age came, we did not grow thicker fur like other animals. We made clothes and fire. When food was scarce, we did not develop better hunting instincts. We invented farming. The Vextai see this as weakness, Hijin said. They think we are primitive because we use simple tools and unpredictable methods. But maybe that is exactly what we need. Over the next several days, they began to plan. They could not build energy weapons or faster ships, but they could make bombs from mining charges. They could not hack Vextai computers directly, but they could overload power systems with modified equipment. They could not match alien strength, but they could strike from shadows and disappear. The more they talked, the more Taemin began to believe they might have a chance. Not to win, perhaps, but to make the Vextai pay a price for their genocide. To show the galaxy that humans would not go quietly into extinction. On their last night before beginning the real work, Taemin stood outside the sleeping quarters and looked up at the alien stars. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were living their lives, unaware that death was coming for them in 6 months. Children were playing, couples were falling in love, families were gathering for meals. The Vextai thought they were removing a problem. They believed humans were just another inferior species to be discarded when no longer useful. They had no idea that they had just declared war on the most stubborn, creative, and dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. Taemin smiled grimly. The Vextai were about to learn why humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every other disaster their homeworld could throw at them. They were about to discover what happened when you backed the most adaptable species in the universe into a corner, with nothing left to lose. The message spread through the hidden networks like wildfire. Every human colony, every secret base, every underground group received the same terrible news. 6 months until the Vextai killed them all. Jaewoo received the transmission while his salvaged freighter drifted between asteroid fields. The ship was barely holding together, patched with scrap metal and held together by hope. He had been running supplies to hidden human settlements for 3 years, staying one step ahead of Vextai patrol ships. Captain, his communications officer Minho called from across the cramped bridge. We are getting responses from 17 different colonies. They want to know what we should do. Jaewoo stared at the star charts displayed on his cracked screen. 17 colonies. Thousands of people looking to him for answers he did not have. How do you fight gods with scrap metal and determination? On Earth's hidden moon base, Su Young was asking herself the same question. The base had been built in secret after the conquest, carved into the dark side of Luna where Vextai sensors could not detect it. She stood in the main command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing human settlements across the galaxy. The Outer Rim colonies are already preparing to run, reported Yoonji, a former military strategist who now coordinated their intelligence network. But there is nowhere to go. The Vextai have mapped every habitable system within 1,000 light years. What about fighting? Su Young asked. With what? Yoonji pulled up tactical displays. They have 3 million warships. We have maybe 50 civilian vessels with improvised weapons. They have planet-killing energy cannons. We have mining charges and industrial explosives. In the lower levels of the base, Do-hyun was discovering something that would change everything. The quantum physicist had been studying captured Vextai technology for years, trying to understand how their advanced computers worked. Today he was not alone in his laboratory. Try it again, he told Min-soo, a young man who had shown unusual skill with computer systems. But this time, do not think about what the system expects. Just do what feels right. Min-soo placed his hands on the alien interface. The device was designed for Vextai neural patterns, with 4 connection points for their four-armed anatomy. Humans should not have been able to use it at all, but Min-soo had found a way to trick the system by using modified human brainwave patterns. The display lit up with alien symbols and data streams. For a moment, everything worked normally. Then Min-soo did something unexpected. Instead of following the logical menu structure, he started jumping between different sections randomly, accessing files in no particular order, mixing commands in ways that should have crashed the system. The Vextai computer tried to predict his next move and prepare appropriate responses. But every time it calculated what a logical user would do next, Min-soo did something else entirely. Within minutes, the alien AI was completely confused, throwing error messages and eventually shutting down to protect itself. Incredible, Do-hyun breathed. You just confused their artificial intelligence to death. I was not trying to break it, Min-soo said, pulling his hands away from the interface. I was just exploring, seeing what would happen if I tried different things. That is exactly the point, Do-hyun realized. The Vextai think in straight lines. Their computers are programmed to deal with logical, predictable behavior. But human thinking is chaotic, creative, unpredictable. He ran to his communication console and called Soo-young in the command center. I need to show you something. Bring Yoonji and anyone else you can find. We may have just discovered how to win this war. An hour later, the command center was packed with people watching Min-soo demonstrate his technique. He interfaced with 3 different captured Vextai systems, confusing each one within minutes using nothing but unpredictable human behavior. Their technology is more advanced than ours, Do-hyun explained, but it is designed to counter other advanced technologies. They have spent 3,000 years fighting species that think like they do. Logical, hierarchical, predictable. Humans are different, Yoonji said, understanding dawning on her face. We evolved as generalists, not specialists. We adapted to changing conditions instead of perfecting one particular approach. Exactly, Soo-young nodded. While other species developed better energy weapons, we learned to make tools from anything we could find. While they built faster ships, we learned to hide and ambush and strike from unexpected angles. The room buzzed with excited conversation as people began to understand what this meant. They were not fighting the Vextai with inferior technology. They were fighting with completely different technology, developed along a path the aliens had never encountered. We need to spread this knowledge, Jae-woo said through the communication link from his ship. Every human needs to understand that our primitive methods are actually our greatest strength. Over the following weeks, the revelation spread through the human resistance network. Engineers began designing weapons that used chemical explosives instead of energy beams. Pilots practiced flying in erratic, unpredictable patterns instead of following standard military formations. Hackers learned to break alien computer systems by thinking like humans instead of trying to think like aliens. On the mining colony where it all began, Taemin received a coded transmission from Earth. The message was simple but revolutionary. Stop trying to fight like them. Fight like us. He shared the message with Hyejin and their small resistance cell. They looked at each other with growing excitement as they realized what it meant. We have been thinking about this all wrong, Hyejin said. We kept trying to figure out how to build better energy weapons or faster ships. But we do not need to match their technology. We need to use ours. Kinetic weapons, Taemin said suddenly. Old-fashioned bullets and explosives. Physical force instead of energy beams. Their shields are designed to deflect energy, not solid objects. Guerrilla tactics, added Do-hyun, who had been listening to the conversation through their hidden communication network. Hit-and-run attacks, sabotage, psychological warfare. Things that do not follow military logic. Chemical weapons, Soo-young suggested. Biological warfare. Viruses designed to attack their computer systems the same way our diseases attack living organisms. The more they talked, the more ideas flowed. Humans had thousands of years of experience fighting wars with limited resources. They knew how to make weapons from farming tools, how to win battles through cleverness instead of strength, how to turn the enemy's advantages against them. 6 months, Yoonji said. We have 6 months to prepare and launch a coordinated strike against the most powerful empire in galactic history. 6 months to show them that the primitive humans are about to teach the galaxy a lesson they will never forget, Taemin replied. As the transmission ended, humans across the galaxy began to prepare for war, not the kind of war the Vextai expected. With fleets of ships trading energy blasts in space, this would be a human war fought with human methods, using human creativity and stubbornness and the willingness to try impossible things. The Vextai had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years because no species had ever challenged their way of thinking. They were about to meet the first species in galactic history that did not think like them at all. The countdown to extinction had become a countdown to revolution. The first attack came 3 months early. The Vextai never saw it coming. Sung-ho crouched in the maintenance tunnels beneath the alien military base on Proxima Station. Beside him, Yejin carefully placed the last explosive charge against a power coupling. The device looked nothing like a proper military bomb. It was made from mining charges, chemical fertilizer, and spare parts from a food processor. 30 seconds, Yejin whispered. Then we moved to the next target. Above them, Vextai soldiers went about their duties completely unaware that 2 humans were crawling through their infrastructure like parasites. The aliens had excellent sensors for detecting energy weapons and military equipment. They had no sensors for detecting improvised bombs made from garbage. The explosion shook the entire station. Emergency lights flickered as power systems overloaded. In the confusion, more bombs went off in different sections. Water pipes burst, flooding critical electronics. Ventilation systems pumped smoke through the corridors. "What is happening?" demanded Commander Vex Moore, the station's commanding officer. His crystal spikes flashed with angry red light as he tried to understand the situation reports flooding his communication system. "Unknown attackers, sir," reported his aide. "They appear to be using primitive explosive devices. Our sensors detected no energy signatures before the attacks." "Primitive?" Vexmore's forearms gestured dismissively. "Find these insects and eliminate them." But by the time Vex-Tai soldiers reached the blast sites, Sung-Ho and Ye-Jin were already gone. Escaped through service tunnels that did not appear on any official base schematics. They had studied the station's design for weeks, learning every weakness, every blind spot, every system that could be sabotaged. Across the galaxy, similar attacks were happening simultaneously. On the trade station at Wolf 359, human saboteurs had poisoned the water supply with chemicals that were harmless to humans, but caused severe illness in Vex-Tai physiology. On the military depot at Vega Prime, explosives disguised as cargo containers were detonating inside weapons storage facilities. Hyun-woo watched the attacks unfold from the bridge of his converted merchant vessel. His fleet consisted of 12 civilian ships, each one modified in secret to carry kinetic weapons instead of cargo. The ships looked harmless from the outside, exactly like the thousands of other vessels that moved goods between star systems. "Target acquired," reported his weapons officer Yuna. "Vex-Tai patrol ship, bearing 27 Mark IV. "Remember the plan," Hyun-woo said calmly. "We are just another cargo convoy. Wait until we are close enough to touch them." The Vex-Tai patrol ship, massive and gleaming with advanced armor, approached the human convoy without concern. These were clearly civilian vessels beneath the notice of a military craft. The alien captain probably intended to scan them for contraband and move on. He never got the chance. At point-blank range, Hyun-woo's ships opened fire with weapons the Vex-Tai had not seen in 1,000 years. Kinetic railguns launched solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The alien ship's energy shields, designed to deflect plasma beams and particle weapons, offered no protection against chunks of steel moving at significant fractions of light speed. The patrol ship's hull cracked open like an egg. Atmosphere vented into space as the crew scrambled to understand what had happened. Before they could recover, the human ships had surrounded them, and boarding parties were cutting their way through the airlocks. "Impossible," gasped the Vex-Tai captain as human soldiers poured onto his bridge. "Your species lacks the technology for space warfare." "You're right," said the boarding party leader, a woman named Sora who had been a police officer before the conquest. "We lack your technology, but we have our own." The Vex-Tai were learning a hard lesson about assumptions. They had spent 3,000 years fighting advanced civilizations that used energy weapons, force fields, and artificial intelligence. They had perfected defenses against those threats. But humans used chemical explosives, kinetic weapons, and biological warfare, old-fashioned methods that worked just as well as advanced technology, sometimes better. On the planet Zerion 7, Ne Young was discovering just how effective old-fashioned methods could be. The former medic now commanded the defense of a refugee camp, housing 3,000 humans. The Vex-Tai had landed ground forces to relocate the refugees, which everyone knew meant execution. The alien soldiers advanced in perfect formation, their energy weapons sweeping the area in coordinated patterns. They expected the humans to either surrender or mount a desperate frontal assault that could be easily defeated. Instead, the Vex-Tai found themselves walking into a maze of tunnels, traps, and ambush points that Na Young's people had spent months preparing. Improvised explosive devices buried in the ground, pitfall traps disguised with local vegetation, chemical weapons made from industrial cleaning supplies. "Where are they?" demanded the Vex-Tai ground commander as his troops took casualties from unseen attackers. "Our sensors show no organized military presence." That was because Na Young was not fighting like a military unit. Her people used guerrilla tactics learned from human history. They struck from hiding, inflicted damage, and disappeared before the aliens could respond. They turned the terrain itself into a weapon, using natural features to channel enemy movement into killing zones. Most importantly, They fought with a desperation the Vextai could not understand. Every human in that camp knew they were going to die if they lost. There was no surrender, no negotiation, no mercy to be expected. This was a fight for survival itself. "Sir," Jiho called from his monitoring station on the Earth-Moon base. "We are intercepting Vextai communications across 17 sectors. They are reporting unusual resistance patterns and unpredictable attack methods." "What exactly are they saying?" asked Yunji, leaning over his shoulder to read the decoded transmissions. "Listen to this." Jiho played back a recording of Vextai military chatter. The alien voices sounded confused, almost panicked. Quote, "Human forces are not following standard tactical doctrine. Our battle computers cannot predict their next actions. Request immediate reinforcements and tactical analysis." Yunji smiled grimly. "Their computers cannot predict chaos. They have never fought an enemy that does not think like they do." The reports kept coming in. Human forces were winning battles they should have lost, using weapons that should not have worked, employing tactics that made no logical sense. More importantly, word was spreading to other enslaved species throughout the galaxy. "The Corvin rebellion on Altair 4 has started using human tactics," Minho reported from Jaewoo's ship. "Improvised explosives, guerrilla warfare, chemical weapons. The Vextai garrison is requesting emergency assistance." "Same story on 3 other worlds," added another voice on the communication network. "Other species are seeing that the Vextai can be hurt. They are starting to fight back." For 3,000 years, the Vextai had maintained control through an image of invincibility. Every species they conquered saw them as unstoppable gods with perfect technology and unlimited power. But humans were proving that the gods could bleed. Back on Proxima Station, Commander Vexmore stared at the damage reports filling his screens. 27 separate systems had been sabotaged. 43 soldiers were dead or injured. The station's operational capacity was reduced by 60%. All of this had been accomplished by 2 humans with homemade bombs. "Sir?" His aide approached nervously. "High Command is demanding a status report." Vexmore looked at the chaos surrounding him. Emergency crews were still fighting fires. Medical teams were treating poisoning victims. Engineers were trying to restore critical systems that had been destroyed by creatures they had dismissed as barely intelligent. "Tell High Command," he said slowly, "that we may have underestimated the human threat." Across the galaxy, similar reports were flooding into Vextai command centers. The primitive humans were fighting back with methods that 3,000 years of military development had not prepared them for. Worse, their success was inspiring other species to rebellion. The Vextai had planned to execute all humans in 3 months. Instead, they found themselves fighting a spreading war against an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. An enemy that turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses and their technological superiority into a disadvantage. The age of Vextai dominance was beginning to crack, and the cracks were spreading faster than they could be repaired. The rebellion spread like a virus through the galaxy. What had started as desperate human resistance was becoming a full-scale revolution involving dozens of species. Wu Jin stood before a gathering of alien representatives. On the hidden base at Kepler 442b, the former corporate negotiator looked at the assembled beings. 6 armed Corvin warriors, crystalline Zephyri diplomats, and hulking Thrak miners. All of them had been slaves under Vextai rule. Now they were looking to humans for leadership. "We have proven that the Vextai can be defeated," Wu Jin said, his voice carrying to every corner of the converted mining facility. "They are not gods. They are not invincible. They are just another species with weaknesses that can be exploited. But they still have superior numbers and technology," protested Zekran, a Corvin commander whose people had been enslaved for 2,000 years. "How can we hope to match their fleets?" "We do not match them," Wu Jin replied. "We do what humans have always done. We adapt, we improvise. We turn their strengths against them." He gestured to a holographic display showing recent battle reports. In the Centauri system, human forces used merchant ships to ram Vextai cruisers. The aliens never expected kamikaze attacks because their own psychology would never allow such tactics. On Proxima 7, Corvin rebels used our improvised explosive techniques to destroy a military base. The Vextai are still trying to understand how we did it. The aliens murmured among themselves in their various languages. For millennia, they had accepted Vextai dominance as a fact of nature. The idea that the Empire could be overthrown was almost too incredible to believe. "My people will fight," declared Gethmore, a massive Thrak whose species had been used as heavy laborers. "Show us how to make these human weapons." Above them in orbit around the planet, HFY was preparing the largest human fleet ever assembled. Her ships were a motley collection of converted freighters, modified mining vessels, and captured Vextai craft. They looked like scrap compared to the sleek alien warships, but appearances could be deceiving. "Status report," she called from the command bridge of her flagship, a former cargo hauler now bristling with kinetic weapons. 17 squadrons ready for departure," reported her tactical officer Chan Ho. "All ships have been equipped with the new hybrid weapon systems." The hybrid weapons were humanity's latest innovation. Vextai energy technology powered by human fusion reactors and controlled by human-designed targeting systems. The result was weapons that were both more powerful and more unpredictable than anything the aliens had encountered. "Navigation. Plot a course for the Vega system," HFY ordered. "It is time to take the fight to their home territory." The Vega system contained one of the Vextai Empire's most important military bases. It was heavily defended by 300 warships and protected by orbital weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. By conventional military logic, attacking it was suicide. But humans did not follow conventional military logic. The attack began with Jwu's merchant vessels approaching the system disguised as a routine supply convoy. The Vextai defenders barely noticed them, focused instead on scanning for the large military fleet they expected to see. By the time they realized the supply ships were actually loaded with explosives, it was too late. 12 improvised bombs, each one the size of a small building, detonated simultaneously among the orbital defense platforms. The explosions were not elegant energy discharges but crude chemical reactions that sent debris flying in all directions. The platforms designed to withstand precise energy attacks were torn apart by flying chunks of metal and rock. "Defense grid compromised," reported a panicked Vextai communications officer. "Multiple platforms destroyed. We are detecting massive kinetic weapons fire from unknown sources." That was HFY's fleet, emerging from hyperspace at point-blank range. Instead of the long-range energy battles the Vextai expected, the human ships closed to knife-fighting distance and opened fire with weapons that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Railguns fired solid metal slugs that punched through advanced armor like paper. Chemical rockets filled with human-designed explosives created massive secondary explosions inside alien ships. Most shocking of all, several human vessels deliberately rammed Vextai cruisers, their crews evacuating at the last second in escape pods. "This is madness," gasped Admiral Kothrek, commander of the Vega Defense Fleet. "No civilized species fights like this." "Good thing we are not civilized," replied Sung Ho over the communication channel, as his boarding party cut through the Admiral's flagship. "We are human." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the most heavily defended system in the Vextai Empire was in human hands. 200 alien warships had been destroyed or captured. The remaining defenders had retreated in complete disorder, broadcasting warnings about human madness and impossible tactics. But the real victory was not military. It was psychological. Across the galaxy, enslaved species heard the news and realized that the impossible had happened. The mighty Vextai had been defeated in their own stronghold by a species they considered primitive. If humans could do it, maybe others could too. On the industrial world of Kepler 186f, the Zephyri workers went on strike and seized control of the crystal refineries. On Tau Ceti Prime, Thrak miners used human-designed explosives to collapse the tunnels and trap their overseers underground. On dozens of worlds, species that had submitted peacefully to Vextai rule for centuries suddenly remembered how to fight. "The situation is becoming critical," reported General Mordak to the Vextai High Council. "We are facing simultaneous rebellions in 47 systems. Our forces are spread too thin to maintain control." "How is this possible?" demanded High Counselor Zethvar. "We have ruled for 3 millennia without serious challenge." "The humans have changed the nature of warfare itself," Mordak replied. "They do not fight like any species we have encountered. Their tactics are unpredictable, their weapons are improvised, and their methods are considered insane by our strategic computers." "Then adapt," Zethvar commanded. "Reprogram the computers. Develop countermeasures. We have tried, sir, But every time we create a defense against their methods, they change their approach. They seem to thrive on chaos and uncertainty. Our predictive models cannot account for such behavior. The truth was becoming clear to the Vextai leadership. They were facing an enemy that fought by no rules they understood, using weapons they had never seen, employing tactics that made no logical sense. Worse, this enemy was teaching their methods to every other species in the galaxy. On Earth's moon base, Somin was analyzing captured Vextai communications with growing excitement. The xenopsychologist had spent years studying alien behavior patterns, and what she was seeing in the intercepts was unprecedented. They are experiencing something they have never felt before, she explained to the assembled human commanders. Fear, confusion, doubt. For 3,000 years, they have known exactly how every battle would unfold. Now they have no idea what to expect. Their entire civilization is built on the assumption of their own superiority, added Do-hyun. They conquered the galaxy because they believed they were the apex species. We have proven that belief wrong. More than that, Somin continued, we have shown them that their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. Their logical, hierarchical thinking cannot adapt to chaos. Their perfect technology cannot counter improvised solutions. Their rigid military doctrine cannot handle guerrilla warfare. The reports kept coming in. Vextai forces were retreating from system after system, unable to cope with enemies that refused to follow the established patterns of galactic warfare. Their empire, built over 3 millennia of conquest, was crumbling in a matter of months. Sir? Yuna called from her communication station. We are receiving a priority transmission from Vextai High Command. It appears to be directed at all human forces. Put it through, ordered Haewon. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the imposing figure of High Counselor Zethvar. The alien's crystal spikes were dim with exhaustion, and his forearms trembled slightly as he spoke. To the human leadership, he began, his voice heavy with defeat. The Vextai Empire proposes an immediate ceasefire and negotiations for a peaceful resolution to this conflict. The human commanders looked at each other in amazement. The most powerful empire in galactic history was asking for peace talks, not surrender, not yet, but an acknowledgement that they could not win this war through force. What should we tell them? Asked Chan-ho. Haewon smiled grimly. Tell them we will consider their proposal. But first they need to understand that this is no longer just about humans. This is about every species they have oppressed for 3,000 years. If they want peace, they are going to have to talk to all of us. The age of Vextai dominance was ending. The galaxy would never be the same again. 6 months after the war ended, Jinwoo stood before the assembled delegates of the new Galactic Council. The massive chamber on the neutral world of Haven 7 buzzed with dozens of different languages as representatives from 847 species gathered for the first free galactic government in 3,000 years. The Terran Federation welcomes all species to this historic gathering, Jinwoo said, his words translated instantly by the new universal communication system. Unlike the Vextai version that had forced everyone to speak their language, this one preserved the unique sounds and meanings of each species' native tongue. In the audience, former enemies sat side by side. Corvan warriors who had learned human guerrilla tactics sat next to Zephyri diplomats who had coordinated multi-system rebellions. Even some Vextai were present, members of their species who had chosen cooperation over continued resistance. The transformation had not been easy. After the Vextai High Command's surrender on their homeworld of Dominus Prime, the galaxy had faced the enormous task of rebuilding civilization without the rigid hierarchy that had dominated for millennia. Billions of beings had to learn how to govern themselves after centuries of following orders from their crystal-spiked overlords. Yu Jin, now director of the Galactic Reconstruction Authority, had spent months traveling to liberated worlds to help establish new governments. She had seen species rediscover traditions that had been suppressed for generations. The Thrak had returned to their ancient council system of decision-making. The Corvan had revived their warrior codes of honor. The Zephyri had rebuilt their crystalline cities as centers of learning and art. The key was not imposing human values on everyone else, Yujin had explained to the reconstruction teams. Each species needed to find their own path to freedom. On the terraforming world of New Eden, Taemin and Hyejin worked alongside beings from a dozen different species to transform a barren planet into a garden world. The project used the best technology from every civilization: Vextai environmental processors, Corvin mineral extraction techniques, Zephyri crystal growing methods, and human adaptive engineering. It is strange, Hyejin said as they watched the first forest taking root in soil that had been lifeless rock just months before. A year ago we were mining slaves waiting to be executed. Now we are building new worlds. That is what humans do, Taemin replied, watching their children play with young Corvin and Zephyri in the growing meadows. We adapt. We survive. We build something better from the ruins of what came before. The children were the most remarkable thing about the new galaxy. Beings who had been enemies for millennia were now learning from each other, sharing knowledge and friendship that transcended the ancient barriers between species. Human creativity combined with Vextai logic, Corvin strength, and Zephyri wisdom was creating innovations that no single species could have achieved alone. Jae-woo now commanded an exploration fleet that included vessels from 20 different civilizations. His mission was to map the unknown regions beyond the former Vextai Empire and search for new worlds suitable for colonization. The ships in his fleet looked nothing like the uniform gray vessels of the old Imperial Navy. Each one reflected the unique design philosophy of its builders while incorporating the best features from other species. Captain, his new first officer Kethran reported. The Corvin's 6 arms moved gracefully over his control panel as he processed sensor data. We have detected 17 potentially habitable systems in the next sector. Any signs of intelligent life? Jae-woo asked. Negative. These appear to be empty systems suitable for peaceful settlement. Good. Mark them for the colony ships. And remember, we offer these worlds to any species that wants them. No one gets to claim exclusive territory anymore. That was one of the fundamental principles of the new galactic order. The age of conquest and empire was over. Resources were shared. Knowledge was freely exchanged. No single species could dominate the others. Not everyone had accepted this new reality easily. Some Vextai extremists had tried to restart the old empire using hidden military bases and stored weapons. They had been stopped not by human forces alone, but by coalition fleets that included their own former subjects. The galaxy had learned that diversity was strength, and unity was the best defense against tyranny. Du Hyun, now leading the Galactic Science Consortium, had made the most remarkable discovery of all. When different species worked together on research projects, they achieved breakthroughs that none of them could have reached alone. Human creativity sparked Vextai logic, which inspired Corvin practical engineering, which led to Zephyri theoretical insights, creating a cycle of innovation that was advancing galactic civilization at an unprecedented rate. We have developed faster than light communication that does not require relay stations, he announced, at the latest consortium meeting. Medical techniques that work across species barriers. Energy systems that are both more efficient and more sustainable than anything the old empire ever built. Most importantly, added his research partner, a Vextai scientist named Kethmore, we have learned that our former belief in racial superiority was not just wrong, it was limiting our potential. Diversity of thought leads to diversity of solutions. The admission was remarkable coming from a member of the species that had once considered itself the pinnacle of evolution. But many Vextai had embraced the new galaxy, recognizing that cooperation offered opportunities their old empire never could. In the council chambers, the debate was focused on the future rather than the past. Representatives were discussing trade agreements, research partnerships, and joint colonization projects. The galaxy that had once been ruled by fear was now governed by hope. We have a proposal from the Centauri Alliance for a new deep space exploration mission, announced Delegate Morthek, a Thrak whose people had become expert terraforming engineers. They want to search for other galaxies that might contain intelligent life. And if we find hostile species? Asked Wertak, a cautious Zephyri diplomat. Beings who might try to conquer us as the Vextai once did. Jinwoo stood to address the concern. Then we will face them together as we face the Vextai, not as separate species fighting alone, but as a united galaxy that values diversity and freedom. But it was Yoonji, now head of the Galactic Defense Coordination, who gave the most important response. We have learned the most valuable lesson in galactic history, she said. We did not defeat the Vextai because humans were superior. We defeated them because we were different. The moment we start believing we are the dominant species, the moment we become what they were, we will deserve the same fate. The warning resonated through the chamber. Every delegate understood the message. The new galaxy was not about replacing one empire with another. It was about creating something that had never existed before. A truly free and diverse civilization, where every species could contribute their unique strengths. As the session ended, Jinwoo walked to the observation deck overlooking the planet's surface. Below, construction crews from dozens of species were building the new galactic capital. The architecture reflected the diversity of its builders. Crystalline Zephyri towers, angular Corvin fortifications, flowing human curves, and even some modified Vextai geometric patterns. Beautiful, is it not? Asked Zethvar, the former Vextai High Counselor who now served as an advisor to the new government. The once proud ruler of the galaxy was humbled but not broken. A city built by cooperation instead of conquest. It is, Jinwoo agreed. But the real beauty is not in the buildings. It is in the idea that former enemies can become friends, that diversity can become strength, that the galaxy can be ruled by hope instead of fear. Your species taught us that, Zethvar said quietly. We thought strength meant uniformity, that progress meant domination. Humans showed us that strength comes from adaptation, that progress comes from cooperation. Jinwoo nodded, but his expression remained serious. The hardest part is not winning the war. It is building the peace. Every day we have to choose to work together instead of falling back into old patterns of conflict and competition. Above them, ships from the combined galactic fleet patrolled the system. Human vessels flew alongside former enemies, their crews working together to protect the fragile peace they had all fought to achieve. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months before, but had become the new reality of galactic civilization. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and at its heart were the primitive humans who had proven that sometimes the greatest strength lies in refusing to accept that anything is impossible. The galaxy would never underestimate diversity again.